So I think we should finish this piece today, please God, hopefully. We're looking at all of the things that Rabbi Meir taught us. We will experience, or we'll have access to, if we learn Torah, lishma. Learn Torah for the correct reasons, for its sake, for the sake of dedication to Hashem, rather than for the sake of educating ourselves, or certainly not for the sake of gaining titles and that kind of thing. So we went through a whole list so far. We said that a person will merit numerous things, and we spoke about the fact that to be beloved to Hashem and beloved to people, and bring simcha to Hashem and bring simcha to people. We spoke about how it helps a person to achieve humility. It doesn't give you humility, but it helps you to achieve humility and fear of God. Prepares a person to become a tzaddik and various other titles which we explored last time. It keeps a person away from doing the wrong thing and brings a person closer to doing the right thing. And now this morning, what we're going to see is the benefits. Well, we're going to start with the benefits that others have from us when we are engaged in learning Torah properly. V'nehenin mimenu. That's what we're up to. V'nehenin mimenu. It's an interesting expression. They, very generic, they, so it could mean the populace at large. Nehenin, benefit or have pleasure, mimenu, from this person, in two ways. Well, four ways actually. V'nehenin mimenu, what do you get from the person? Eitza v'tushia bina ugvura. Very interesting mix. Eitza, tushia bina ugvura, and then he brings a pasuk that proves this. Shenemar li eitza v'tushia ani bina li gevura. Okay, so why the pasuk is that necessary at this particular point in time? It's interesting because we haven't brought a pasuk to verify any of the other things that we've learned over here. So it's interesting that this pasuk, or that this particular statement has a verse to support it, which is an interesting point. But I think more interesting for us is, what are these things? Eitza, Tushia, Bina, and Gevura. So let's start with the ones we know the translations. What's Eitza? Advice, counsel. Yes. Tushia? Okay, we're not sure. Bina? Understanding. Gevura? Strength. Okay. So what's the missing link? Tushia. Right? We're not sure what Tushia means. Now the word Tushia is used as a statement of salvation. For example, after the second tablets, so the Chazal comment that the second tablets are kiflayim letushia. Now there's two ways that you could translate that. Kiflayim, there's double, not only because it's the second tablets, but because along with the second tablets, there was a lot of information that had not yet been shared with the Jewish people. So that extra information is the double that the Chazal refer to. Letushia, which is like a salvation from the sin of the golden calf. Or you could read it as Tushia is actually a description of the Torah, and Kiflayim Letushia means double as much Torah is available. Now why is the Torah called Tushia? The Gemara tells us the reason that the Torah is called Tushia, well, here let's illustrate it with a story. And you've probably heard the story. There's a very great sage in the Gemara called Rabbi Yochanan. And Rabbi Yochanan one day is bathing in the local river, as people did. And there was another fellow passing by called Shimon ben Lakish, who at that stage of his career was a highway robber. He was a bandit. And Shimon ben Lakish leaps across the river. He was a very powerful, athletic man, so he leaps across the river. And Rabbi Yochanan gets his attention, and he says, "Why don't you learn Torah?" Can you imagine? Can you imagine somebody is being held up in an armed robbery, and they say to the guy, "Why don't you rather learn Torah?" You can imagine how successful that pitch would be. Anyhow, that's what he says. He says, "Why don't you learn Torah?" So Shimon ben Lakish tells him, "I have no interest. Why have a pitch? I have a good career. I'm feared in these parts. I've got a lot of money. What do I need Torah for?" So Rabbi Yochanan, the Gemara tells us, was a very good-looking man. So he tells Shimon ben Lakish, "If you commit to learning Torah, I'll introduce you to my sister." Basically, if you think, I'm a good-looking guy, my sister comes from the same gene pool. So, So Shimon ben Lakish says, "Fine. I'm willing to, if that's what's on offer, then I'm willing to consider." And then he's obviously got his horse or whatever it was that he was traveling on back on the other side of the river, because remember, he leapt over the river. So now he jumps back across the river, and this time he comes short, and splash. So he says to Rabbi Yochanan, he says, what's going on over here? What happened to me? So Rabbi Yochanan tells him the Torah is called Tushia. Tushia means, from the expression Toshash Koichoi Shel Moshe, that there were occasions when the Jewish people complained against Moshe, and it says Moshe's strength sapped, became weak. So Torah is called Tushia because what it does is it saps a person of their physical energy because they're now invested in spiritual things. And Shimon ben Lakish went on to become Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, otherwise known as Reish Lakish, who appears in the Gemara pretty much everywhere that Rabbi Yochanan appears because he was of that caliber. So it's a nice ending to the story. The part that's relevant to us is Tushia could mean a weakening of the physical, materialistic side of the person because of an empowering of their spiritual side. Very interesting. So, what do people benefit from this person who is dedicated to learning Torah for its sake? Eitza Tushia bino gvura. The person gets counsel, they get salvation / the weakening of materialism, they get insight and understanding, and they get strength. What are these things? You know what's interesting about this? It does not say, in this part of the Mishnah / Brisa, it does not say that the person has Eitzah, because that's what you'd expect, right? The person who learns Torah for its own sake now has advice to share. Remember at the end of the last chapter, what did we say? We said, Ben Chamishim le'Eitzah. At the age of 50, a person is qualified to share advice and to give counsel to other people. So you would have expected this to be quite similar, where it says that the person now has Eitzah. They have advice to give. Well, let's be honest. There are many people who have advice to give. Doesn't mean we enjoy it. In fact, many people who give us advice would prefer if they kept their mouth shut. I didn't ask you, I don't want your advice, I don't need your advice yet. So that's the emphasis of here, not the fact that this person is qualified to share counsel with others, but rather nenin mimenu, that people will enjoy that advice and that counsel. Now that's a big chap. To have advice to share is one thing. To have advice that people want to listen to, that's a far greater achievement. So nenin mimenu, not only will they want to hear the person's advice, but nenin, they have hana'ah, they actually have pleasure from the fact that we shared advice with them. That's a big accolade for the individual who's learning Torah, lishma. Not only will they have advice, the Yachin tells us that the advice that they'll have, let's be honest, sometimes a person gives us advice and we listen to that advice and we enjoyed their advice because it sounded good at the time. But then when we try to apply the advice, either it didn't work, in other words, we were unable to apply. Never had that? Somebody tells you amazing advice, or you read a book, or you go to a seminar, and you come out and you say, that's it, my life has changed. Everything is going to be different from this moment and on. And then you try and apply it. And it was nice in theory. But in practice, it's just not, as they say in Yiddish, segeit nicht. It's not happening. So that's why over here, Rabbi Meir says, not only onenim mimenu eitzah, not only will people enjoy the fact that you give them sound, meaningful advice, but to Shia, they will be able to apply that advice in their lives. And they will have the benefit not only of the theory of the advice, but of the application of the advice as well. And that's really a chap. That's really meaningful. How many times has it happened that somebody tries something in their life and it really helps them, so now they want to tell the whole world, it worked for me, it will certainly work for you. It's not how it goes. What works for me doesn't necessarily work for you. What works for you doesn't necessarily work for the next person. So the chap over here is not just to give eitzah like some kind of stock standard advice. You're going to write a book, you're going to start a podcast. I don't know, what do people have to do in today's world, you know? So I'm going to sell you a product, but rather it's bespoke. To Shia, it actually speaks to the individual, and it actually assists the individual in a way that benefits them rather than in some generic, broad sense. Why is that? For two reasons. Bina and Gvura. Those are the two reasons. Meaning to say, the person who learns Torah for its sake get so much out of the Torah that they could share with other people, but not only will they share with other people what to do, they'll share with other people bina and appreciation and understanding why to do it. Because let's be honest, if we appreciate why something is important, it's more likely that we'll actually do it. Whereas if somebody just tells us, do X, I don't know, will we? I don't know. That's why mothers very often try to explain things to their children to get their children to do these things. Right? Because we anticipate, I understand why it makes sense, so all I need to do is to teach you why it makes sense, and then you'll do it. For example, brush your teeth. Because that way, in 75 years' time, you'll still have them. Makes sense to us. But to the child, let's be honest, child doesn't care about 75 years ahead. They're not thinking, oh, what, I don't know, well, something will happen. I don't know, we'll 3D print new teeth. I don't know what's going through their mind. So bina means you've got to transmit something in such a way that the person understands and appreciates it in their context, in their terms, so that they can onboard it. So that's the value of this person. Person who's learning Torah Lishma is getting to the core and the essence of the Torah and therefore can transmit it to anybody. So let's just analyze that point for one moment, because when we talk about the essence of the Torah, you can transmit it. That's why people will take that advice, apply that advice, see the benefit from that advice, and understand the meaning behind that advice. What exactly does that mean? So let's try this. Imagine if we would invite somebody into this room and ask them to give us a lecture on, I don't know, let's choose a topic, some very complex topic. What would it be? Artificial intelligence. Okay, so we're going to invite somebody in who's going to teach us about artificial intelligence. Now, by the way, in South Africa, we don't have to be taught about artificial intelligence because we have it in government. So, or unless that's natural stupidity, which is, natural stupidity might be more powerful than artificial intelligence. Anyway, so we bring somebody in to teach us about artificial intelligence. So they walk in. Now, you get some people who believe that they're expert in a particular topic, but they're really not. And what they do is they walk in and they start, as we used to do in exams. Do you remember we used to machine gun an answer? If you didn't know the answer, you would just write as much information as possible, hoping that somewhere in there's something of value. So that's basically what people often do when they don't know what they're talking about. They either smother us with facts, or they speak in jargon, so we think they know what they're talking about, or they do in the tradition in the frum world, when somebody really doesn't know what they're talking about, is they say, the whole idea is. So when somebody says the whole idea is, you know that they really have no idea what they're talking about, so they're overcompensating. Needless to say, we're going to walk out of here completely confused, because the person who walks in who doesn't really know about AI, who's trying to tell us about AI, is just going to leave us thinking this is above my pay grade. On the other hand, we could bring somebody in who really knows all of the technical stuff about AI, but because of that, they can't talk our language. So they walk in over here and they give us this whole technical talk, and it's very detailed and it's very accurate, but it's completely useless. That's like the story of the person in the hot air balloon. Did I ever tell you that story? The hot air balloon, and you know that you can't control a hot air balloon, so wherever the wind takes you, and there he is floating around, and he's floating over this particular office park, and he sees a man in the parking lot, and he says, "Excuse me, sir, can you tell me where I am?" So he says, "Yes, you're in a hot air balloon about 50 meters above the ground." So he says, "Thank you. Now I know that I'm over the Microsoft offices." So the guy says, "How do you know you're over the Microsoft offices?" He says, "Because you've given me information that is technically accurate and completely useless." So that's what happens. The person will come in and give us information that is technically accurate but completely useless. Now, have you ever spoken to a person who is such an expert in their field that they can explain what they do or what they learn or what they teach to anybody? Yeah. That's true greatness. So, for example, we're told that Shlomo HaMelech could give 3,000 parables for any topic. That doesn't mean that he had this wild imagination. It means that he could speak to 3,000 levels of audience and tailor-make the message in a way that they could appreciate it. Because when you understand the essence of something, then you don't battle to transmit it in any forum. It's when we don't capture the essence of something, that's when we start tripping over ourselves. So if the person, for example, doesn't have any basic knowledge of the subject, we can't talk to them. Or if they're not familiar with the terminology, we can't talk to them. But if we understand something at its essence, we can translate it into the language of anybody. When a person learns Torah Lishma, they're getting the essence of the Torah, and therefore they're in a position to transmit that Torah to any person relative to their circumstances and level in a way that will be beneficial to them. And that's one of the surprising things when if you've ever had a conversation with somebody when you need life advice, not halachic advice, life advice, and you discover somebody who really is dedicated to Torah for its sake, you find that they're remarkably in touch. You would expect them to be so removed from the world because they're so engaged in Torah. But you actually find them to be remarkably in touch. Because when you understand the essence of the Torah, you understand how the Torah is and we have already discussed this in this particular Mishnah, the blueprint of everything. So every single facet and experience of life is encoded within the Torah, and they can see that. Therefore, they're able to give us eitzah, sound advice, tushia, that we can actually apply in our lives in a way that helps us out of the tough spots we're in. Bina, in a way that we actually understand why this is the case, because they could transmit it to us in such a sound, solid way. Most importantly, the way, right?
That is exactly the story.
100%. So most importantly, more important than all of that is Gevurah. Why Gevurah? What's Gevurah? Let's not just translate it as strength. Specifically, when we use the term Gevurah in Torah language, and we had it already in the 4th chapter, when we spoke about Ezehu Gibor. So what is strength? What did we say? Is self-control. Self-control, right? Ezehu Gibor HaKovesh Es Yitzroi. Who is a powerful person? The person who can conquer their own yetzer, their own inclinations, their own temptations, their own distractions. In other words, there's a saying, I love the saying. Saying goes, who you are speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you're trying to say. In other words, we are, by nature as human beings, generally allergic to hypocrisy. So if somebody's telling us wisdom and is not applying that in their own lives, we find it difficult to take that wisdom from them. Whereas if we see that the person has gevurah, they actually have that self-control in their own lives. And they have that self-mastery in their own lives. And they've actually worked through the tough stuff themselves. They're not just lecturing us about how to work through the tough stuff. Then we can hear what they have to say. That's why he tells us that in order for a person to be able to dispense eitzah and tushia, to be able to give counsel that is meaningful, that is applicable, that is relatable, that is doable, and of course is aligned with Torah values, bina, so you can explain why this is what the Torah expects of us, the only way we'll actually accept, because remember, he started off by saying, nehenin mimenu. People will be able to benefit and enjoy what we're sharing with them is because of gevurah, because we have the self-discipline and focus to apply these values in our own lives. And a person's example is ultimately their loudest voice. So that's what allows us to be able to learn and accept the guidance and counsel from this person. With that in mind, we can now go to the next phase where he says, V'nosenes loy, the Torah gives a person three things: Malchus, Memshala, V'chikur din. Now, Malchus and Memshala sound very, very similar to each other, so we're going to have to distinguish between the two. Malchus is kingship or royalty. Memshala is dominion. Okay? Dominion. And chikur din is
investigation.
Right, that would be the way to say it, right? The investigation or the thorough exploration of the law. So that's what the Torah gives this person. Again, what kind of a person? The person is dedicated to learning Torah, lishma, for its own sake, not somebody who's learning Torah for a vested interest. So what does the Torah give the person? Malchus, royalty, memshala, dominion, and chikur din, this understanding of the depths, to be able to plumb the depths of the law. So we have an expression, the Gemara says, man malkei rabbanon. Who are the kings nowadays in the absence of a royal family in Judaism? Who are our royalty today? So we're not like the English, whose royalty are interesting, and we're not like the Americans, whose royalties are Hollywood. The Havdil, our royalty is the Torah scholars. That's our royalty. Those are the people, that's the first family of Judaism, is the people who are dedicated to Torah learning. So therefore the Maharal tells us that it's quite apt. An individual who is dedicated to learning Torah deserves to be royalty in our community. No senes loy malchus. It gives that person the position that we should treat them as royalty, which means two things. We should treat them with tremendous respect and with a state of awe. Because that's how it is with a king. A king, you have to, when you stand in front of the king, you're supposed to stand with a sense of awe. Not like our modern world where everybody's, hey, friendly backslapping with everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. Here it's saying that the person who is a true Torah scholar should be treated with a certain sense of awe, put on a certain kind of a pedestal. Memshala is something really different. Very different to Malchus. And so therefore we have to unpack, because it's not typical to have Malchus and Memshala in the same phrase, and certainly not typical to have them both apply to the same person at the same time, which is what Rabbi Meir seems to be saying, because he tells us that this is an individual who gets Malchus Memshala, right? With the Vava Mechaber, with a conjunction. So it sounds like the person is Malchus and Memshala. Let's understand what the difference is between Malchus and Memshala. So, in our davening, in the Ma'ariv service, we use this expression about Hashem. Umalchusoi beratzoin kiblu aleihem. That Hashem's kingship, they, the Jewish people, beratzoin, willingly accepted on themselves. Okay? So, what does that tell you about Malchus? The nature of Malchus is, there is a willing population of followers. That's the nature of Malchus. So a melech, although the melech is not a democratic leader in the technical sense of democracy, but he is, in a sense, a democratically elected leader. Because ein melech beloy am, there's no such thing as a king without a dedicated nation. The way that a person becomes the king is that the people empower him to become the king. So, for example, we're coming up for Purim, so we've got to stick in a little bit of Purim over here. What does it say at the beginning of the Megillah? The Megillah starts off, Vayehi b'mei Achashverosh. It was in the days of Achashverosh. Who? No, it's not how you read it. Who Achashverosh? He was Achashverosh, and the next word is really valuable for us. The next word is Ha-moy-leich. Isn't that interesting? It's the first time we're meeting Achashverosh. He is the king of Persia, the largest empire in the world at that time, and one of the largest empires in history. And it does not call him Vayehi b'mei hamelech Achashverosh. It was in the days of the king. It doesn't say that. Even when it gets to the point about his position, Hu Achashverosh, you would have thought, Hamelech. Okay, now tell us. Now tell us, he's Achashverosh the king. It doesn't. It says Ha Moilech. What's the difference between the word Melech and the word Moilech grammatically?
One is really,
Correct. So Melech is an adjective, or right? He is the king, or a noun. It's a noun unrelated to him, but if you're describing him, it's an adjective describing him. Moilech is a verb. Moilech, he is ruling. Right? So what does that tell us? The Mefarshim point out, he did not deserve to be the king. He was not, that's a good point. That's a good point. Right? It doesn't say Moshe. But the fact is that he was not of a royal dynasty. And the fact of the matter is, he was actually there by default, because he married somebody who came from a royal dynasty. And he was there by default because the Persians had overrun the Babylonians before them. So, Hamoilech, he lands up in a position where he's on the throne. Right? So, generally speaking, the word melech, ein melech beloy am, a person is not a king unless they have the support of the people. The kind of despot who pushes themselves into a position to control people against their will, that is called a moishel. Where do we see the term moishel used in the context of Hashem? So we already said, right? We say in our brachas, Baruch atah Hashem melech ha'olam, right? Where do we see the word moishel with regards to Hashem? right? Where on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur? That's what you expected, right? You do, absolutely, right? So the occasions where you see the word Moshel usually are used either in the context of Hashem ruling over the nature of this world or ruling over the nations of this world. Meaning to say that that's where Hashem, so to speak, enforces his position on those who do not automatically or willingly accept his position. We accept his position, right? Umalchusoi bakoil mashallah. Hashem's kingship over all, meaning outside of our dedicated community, mashallah is in a position of strength. So, Malchus and Memshala are apparently a contradiction in terms. This is an oxymoron. How can you say in your Malchus Memshala, that it's going to give him both kingship and dominion? They're two different things. Now let me ask you, what kind of a rabbi would you like? A Melech rabbi or a Moshel rabbi? Everybody wants a Melech rabbi. And that's who we're talking about, right? Surely, we're talking about the context of a person who's going to be a leader in the community, who's going to be a teacher in the community. You would expect that the big accolade is, you're going to be a Melech. Noisenes loi Malchus. Malchus Memshala. Very odd. So what's it telling us? It's telling us two things. The first thing is it's telling us, Noisenes loi Malchus. The person who is dedicated to learning the Torah for its sake, who's therefore doing it the correct way, is somebody who is embraced by the community, and therefore the community, because that's a melech is somebody who's embraced by the community, is put into his position because people want this individual as their leader. So this person is embraced by the community, they want to learn from him, they respect him, and they even stand in awe of him, all of the features that are associated with a melech. Where he has memshala is part of his responsibility. And sometimes leaders don't like this, including our rabbinic leadership sometimes don't like this. But part of his responsibility is memshala. Sometimes he has to tell people what to do, even if they don't like it. That's what true leadership is. It's not good enough just to pander to individuals and feed them the kind of thing that makes them or makes you popular. So noisenes loi Malchus, the Torah gives this person Malchus this great position within the community, Memshala, as well as the ability to, in a sense, dictate what should happen in the community, and people will accept it. Usually when a person is a Moshel, everybody is begrudging. Okay, we have no choice. This is the Moshel, we've got to listen, otherwise there'll be consequences. Here it's Malchus and Memshala. This person is respected and beloved to the community and yet has Memshala, the ability to actually get people to do things that they're not yet ready or comfortable to do. So it's a beautiful blend in a sense. In fact, that is really what a Melech is supposed to do. Because if you think about it, the way the Melech treats the people is by telling them these are the rules, not negotiating those rules with the people. And so if the Talmidei Chacham and the sages are supposed to replace the royalty in our world, then there is a certain element of that where they have to tell us there are certain things that you have to do. This is just how it is. It's not open to debate.
So that's Musa.
No, that's halacha. That's halacha. Telling people this is what you have to do. This is what you have to do. Halacha is not negotiable. Ethics, moral development, those are things we could debate. But halacha, black and white. This is how it has to be. Vechikur dil, as well as the ability to plumb the depths of what lies behind the halacha. Now this is really, really important. It's really important. I thought you know why it's really important? Because probably one of the great cynical criticisms of modern Judaism is that we've got ancient laws in an ever-changing world. How does that work? Like everybody always says, they didn't have cars in those days. Who says you can't drive on Shabbos? Or driving, okay, maybe you could, it's combustion and you're actually heating up a flammable liquid and then you're cooling it when you brake. Flipping a light switch. Come on. There's no fire in a light switch. You've got LED globes. There's no fire. You're not igniting a fire. It's not the old, filament that actually used to heat up. What's the problem? The rabbis didn't. I'm telling you, if the rabbis would have known about these things, they would have allowed it. Or here's another one, which is definitely on people's minds. It's not yet something which is commercially available, but it will be. When they lab grow meat, will it be fleishig? Will it be kosher? It's not shechted. You took cells from a living cow and you produce something and it's not shechted. Yeah, all the questions that everybody's going to have, etc., etc., etc. So how do you expect in ancient Judaism that, quite honestly, is still sitting in the same set of Gemaras that it was in 1800 years ago, is now going to, guide us on these things? Genetic engineering, end-of-life issues, organ harvesting, IVF, fertility, all these. Come on, where does it say in the Gemara? So, that's the bracha of the person who learns Torah for its own sake. Remember, when you learn Torah for its own sake, you get to understand the essence of what the Torah is. When you understand the essence of a principle, you can apply that principle no matter what the circumstances are. The principle doesn't change. But you've got to know the essence of those principles. So if you understand the essence of the principles, you can apply your knowledge from thousands of years ago aptly and appropriately in the now. People are too superficial to think about that. So people just think the externalities have changed. The way in which we do business has changed. The way in which technology impacts our lives has changed. That's true. But the principles of life haven't changed. So whatever the principles are that govern how you know when a person is no longer alive are the same principles that will apply scientifically if we can do different things to either keep them alive or take organs from them when they die. It's the same principles. The same principle of why we do Shabbos and what the framework of Shabbos is, those same principles will apply regardless of whether Shabbos is about dragging a plow across your field or flipping a light switch. That's chikur din. The person doesn't just know the laws, the person understands the mechanics that make those laws. And once you're in that field and you understand that, you can apply any principle across the board to any circumstance. And that's really the beauty of a person who's invested in learning Torah properly, that they have this incredible insight. And what's really amazing about it is how often you will see that, how often do we ever encounter people who are at that level of learning? Not so often. But what you will see is they almost intuitively know where to go in a particular halachic conversation. Because there's this chikur din, when you are absolutely thorough. I don't know if you've ever seen this. You see something similar, just to illustrate the point, metaphorically. You see this with a doctor. A doctor has many, many, many years' experience. You'll walk through the door and they can already diagnose. Without having to go through, they'll obviously support their initial hunch with diagnostics. But the experience, you just know. You know that this is where this is headed. So, chikur din. The person has drilled down into the fabric of into the essence of what halacha is all about, and therefore they are in a position to be able to apply halacha right across the board in any circumstance, in any environment. And then he tells us, umegalin loy rozei Torah. They reveal to this individual the secrets of Torah. Same theme. Can you see the carry of this theme right through? So how does a person have the capacity to give this incredible counsel? How does this person have the ability to be a true leader and even to dictate to the society how we should behave? How does this person have this depth of insight into the halachic background? Why? Because they reveal to this person the secrets of Torah. Isn't that powerful? What's so powerful about it? Obviously, if I'm going to ask you if it's powerful, everyone's going to say yes. But what's so powerful about it? Megalin loy. That's what's powerful. Here is an individual who has dedicated themselves to Torah learning in the most absolute and incredible way, and this is not their achievement. It is a gift. Megalin loy. They obviously referring generically to whatever systems Hashem has in place. Megalin loy, revealed to this person, Rozei Torah, the secrets of Torah. Isn't that fascinating? Megalin loy. Now we have an example of this. The example is with Moshe Rabbeinu. So we've got Moshe Rabbeinu in the one corner, and we've got Shlomo Melech in the other corner. That's like an epic intellectual showdown. So Moshe is the greatest prophet who ever lived. Shlomo HaMelech is King Solomon, the wisest person who ever lived. So who would you rely upon to decode the most thorny issue in Judaism? Who would you go to? Would you go to Moshe or would you go to King Solomon? You go to Moshe, right?
Yeah.
Why?
Got it straight from Hashem.
Because he got it straight from Hashem. Let's use an illustration. There is one mitzvah in the entire Torah that nobody understands, which is the red heifer, the Parah Aduma. So the Parah Aduma, Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon famously says, Omarti achakma, I told myself that I would be wise enough to crack the code and understand what the meaning of this red heifer is. Vehi rechoika mimeni, and I came to discover that it is beyond me. So what's he telling us? What's Shlomo HaMelech telling us? Okay, I've found...
No, you
Okay,
can't.
true. But before we get there, what does it sound like you're saying? I've reached my limit.
Yes.
Right? It's like somebody would say in today's world, would say, I'm out. I've done my best, and this is above my pay grade, right? I thought I could work it out. It's beyond me. And the implication is, if he's the wisest human, and it's beyond him, then it's certainly beyond us. Is that what Shlomo HaMelech is saying? That it's beyond us? So take all the human beings across the whole span of history, put us all into one collective networked neural experience? Would we work it out? No. But maybe there's some spiritual being hovering at a different spiritual altitude. I don't know, an oifan, soraf, one of those things. Maybe they understand. Maybe they understand the secret because they're very complex spiritual beings way ahead of us, light years ahead of us. Maybe they understand it. Maybe they know why there's a Parah Aduma. What do you think?
No.
If we could interview the Seraphim, who are the highest beings that we talk about, right? Would they know the secret of the Parah Aduma?
No.
No, why not?
Torah was given to us.
Torah is given to us, that's true, but maybe some of the backstory was given to them. Maybe some of the secrets were given to them, I don't know. How do you know there are no WikiLeaks in heaven?
No.
No?
They never studied Torah for the sake of learning.
They never studied Torah for the sake of learning. Good point. Good point. The answer is because it is not the inability of the human to understand this principle, this mitzvah. It's the fact that the mitzvah was designed not to be understood. Doesn't matter who you are. It could be the greatest brain in the highest spiritual level, as long as it is a function of understanding. This particular mitzvah was designed not to be understood. So you've got the wrong technology. Brain is the wrong technology. Intellect is the wrong technology. That would be the equivalent of saying, wow, today's shiur was really profound. I was not able to pack it into my purse before I left. I would say, well, obviously not, because that's the wrong technology. We don't put shiurim in bags. We put shiurim in heads. Right? So you can't put something which is a choik, which is one of those mitzvahs that is beyond intellect, into any intellect, no matter whose. Yet the Midrash tells us that Hashem says to Moshe, Lecho ani megale ta'am parah. To you, I will reveal the secret of the Parah Aduma. Whoa, stop, hang on a second. What do you mean you'll reveal it? We've just said that it's not possible. It's not possible for the human mind, or any mind, even the greatest mind, even if Hashem created a mind that hasn't yet been created, it's not possible because a mind is not the right means by which to grab infinite godliness. So, what do you mean, I'll reveal it to you? This is a very, very important principle. Hashem can do anything. That means to say that Hashem is capable of revealing what cannot be revealed. That's exactly the point, because Hashem is infinite. What's going to happen when Mashiach comes? Everybody think, what's going to happen when Mashiach comes? What are we going to do all day?
My brother's got a list of 40 questions.
Questions. Okay, so you'll ask Mashiach questions. What are you going to do all day when Mashiach comes?
Carry on just the way we are.
What do you mean just the way we are? You're going to get stuck in traffic when Mashiach comes?
No.
Is the internet going to go down? Will there be load shedding when Mashiach comes? Right?
There will be peace.
So what does it say? The prophet Yeshaya tells us, "V'nigle kavod Hashem." Hashem will be revealed. Not we'll get to learn more, understand more. Hashem's going to reveal more. There's a big difference. There's a big difference. If something is revealed to us, then we have access to it even if we can't process it through our minds. Megalin loy rozei Torah means that when a person works themselves up to a particular level of dedication to Torah learning, which is effectively to the limits of human ability, then Hashem gifts them to go beyond human ability. We usually describe it this way. They are chamishim sha'arei bina, 50 gates of understanding that Hashem created. And on average, the greatest people in history only access level 49. And we're told that the gift that Hashem gave Moshe was Sha'ar HaChamishim. It's a gift. So the person can go, as a human being, you can go millions or billions of stages of intellectual growth. But not one of those levels, even if you're at level 10 billion of spiritual growth, not one of those levels is any closer to infinite. Right? In other words, if you have in your bank account, okay, let's not do that. If I have in my bank account right now, okay, 100 rand, and you have in your bank account right now 1,000,000 rand, you are wealthier than I am. And if I had another 999,990 rand, I'd catch up to you. So that means that even though you are vastly wealthier than I am, there is a process and a possibility to catch up. But if you have 1,000,000 rand in your bank account, and somebody else has 10 million rand in their bank accounts, and then somebody else has some weird thing with their bank account that we don't understand, that it's infinite money. Obviously can't happen in real life, yeah? But just assume that it was infinite money. So who's closer to them in wealth? The person with 1,000,000 or the person with 10 million? The person with 1,000,000, the person with 100 billion. Who's closer to infinite? Neither. So all of the progress that a person makes in their spiritual growth, in their learning, etc., you could go millions of miles of spiritual growth and still be infinitely distant from what Hashem has to offer. Megalin loy. But when Hashem reveals to somebody the secrets of Torah, then that is an infinite jump. That is a complete paradigm shift. They are no longer like any human being that you know. Because they're no longer operating on human wisdom, on human insight. They're now being fed insight directly from Hashem. It's what the Yachin calls miniature prophecy. Because that's what it is. Prophecy is where Hashem's giving somebody a message. And we know, for example, that the Gemara tells us in the time before Moshiach, prophecy will be given to people with mental disabilities. It's a gift. It's not necessarily always a function of who the person is and what they've achieved. In this particular context, we're saying the person has worked so hard on their dedication to Torah. They've learned Torah Lishma to such an extent that now Hashem is Megale, reveals to that person secrets of Torah, and the definition of a secret is it's designed not to be available to people. That's the greatness of this person's achievement. They now have access to things that are technically inaccessible. And that might be, out of everything that we've learned so far, maybe the most radical development of the person who is learning Torah Lishma. To be able to have revealed to them elements of Judaism, elements of Torah, elements of Hashem's wisdom that by definition should be inaccessible. And that's going to have an impact on the person, and how that person then goes on to teach, which is the next piece, which somehow delusionally I thought we were actually going to get to today, but apparently not. So please God, we'll continue that next time. But that's the direct correlation, right? From Megalim Lo Rozei Torah to what we're going to speak about next week.
Are rising higher than Sodot?
Interesting question. I don't think we're making that kind of a distinction over here, Raz versus Sod. But I will tell you this. I'll tell you what's interesting about Raz. Raz is Reish and Zayin, which is 207. And the word Or light is Aleph and Vav, put that together is 7, and a Reish, which is 200. So the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov is that anybody who understands the Raz, the secret of Torah, is a person who has the Or, the real light of the Torah, which obviously illuminates all other areas of Torah. So I would assume that that's why we've chosen Raz over here versus Soid, because that's the message, as we're going to see in the next piece, that it's not just what you get, but it's what you're able to share as well.
Will you be able to share it? Because I just...
Good question, that's next week. Will you be able to share it? No, seriously, that's a very good question, because if it's not shareable, how do you share it? So that's what we're going to explore, please God, next week.
My brother